Once you say yes to the structure, you never get out.
I'm in the structure.
Yeah, so am I.
Are you in the structure?
No, I'm right outside here.
And I'm next to you.
Hey, sorry, what's wrong with the structure?
How can we get out of the structure?
Lisa, give him a hello.
Hello, and welcome to the Comeback Official Podcast. I'm Evan Ross Katz. This podcast exists for the fans who love the comeback, who quote it, who study it, who feel seen by it. We're here to go deeper, to unpack what was happening on screen and behind the scenes. This episode is called Valerie Faces Reality. It was written by Michael Patrick King and Lisa Kudrow, and directed by Michael Patrick King. If you haven't watched this episode yet, what are you doing? Go watch it on HBO Max, then come right back here. Later, we'll be joined by Benito Skinner, who plays Carter the costumer, and John Early, who plays Josh, the writer, showrunner. But first, I'm once again joined by the artist who built this world from top to bottom, Lisa Kudrow.
That's me. Hi.
And Michael Patrick King.
Hello.
Episode 3 is dedicated to Robert Michael Morris and all about Mickey's absence, the ache of it, the ritual of processing, and the quiet realization that Valerie, for the first time, may be ready to let him go.
You know, Mickey would always say, whenever there was something disappointing, like a dressing room or lunch order, he'd say, let's not ask for the moon when we have the stars.
As a fan, it was so satisfying to see him celebrated, not just by Valerie, but by the show, and really, to borrow a comeback term, really dignified.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Lisa has a giant spiritual side to her. So there was no way that she and I weren't going to honor him. But we didn't want to do an episode that was solely about honoring him. It was too naked. We wanted to do something about what we were stuck with, which is the death happened off camera. So we came up with the idea that Valerie maybe hadn't embraced it. She couldn't say goodbye.
If I had an Oscar, I don't think I'd be working at Trader Joe's.
Okay, Mickey, don't.
Tommy.
Tommy, who is kind of a placebo. She's getting someone who thinks she's fabulous. She's getting someone who's Irish heritage. Yeah. She's getting
Same era.
Yeah. New Mickey.
Yeah. And then our fun was he's not Mickey at all. He's his own being. He says, I'm not Mickey.
I didn't know you had wigs, so I couldn't tell you to bring them in or pick them up because I'm not Mickey. I'll never be Mickey.
For me, that was telling the audience, it's okay, we're not trying to make him Mickey.
Right.
Because the first thing they go is, oh, he's the new Mickey. They're trying to make him Mickey. And then we go, no, he's not Mickey. No one can be Mickey.
And yet, as an audience member, you have this immediate love for him in that he protects Valerie in that same way that Mickey did. Yes. And there's this moment later in the episode when the cameras are going to try and follow Valerie, and he stops them, similarly to how Mickey did in the first season. Yes. You want someone that is unwaveringly in Valerie's corner because you, as an audience member, you love her. And so when the world is doing her wrong, when you see all these obstacles that she's facing, you need someone else that's seeing it too.
Yeah.
And Tommy fulfills that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
He's different than Mickey in that he's 85 and has a direct line to the truth.
Yes.
And he doesn't, Mickey was a little bit more pliable, all that, no, you're wrong, Mickey. And Mickey would just sort of let her pretend that she was right. Tommy goes right for it. I think you're got a problem.
Right.
And Lisa came up with, well, you're wrong. One of the things that Lisa was adamant about was that Valerie designed his ashes box.
No, yes, I
Remember?
did. Yes, I kept seeing it as like something
turquoise and
ornate,
black.
something sparkly.
How do these conversations work between the two of you when you're trying to figure something out and one of you has an idea and the other one might have a different idea? How do you two come together to decide on which is ultimately the idea to roll with?
Not agreeing on something like that isn't important. So it just sort of gets like, it's a box. Okay, it's a box. Like, to be determined later. And let's carry on with what's the story and the structure of the story, what's informing the story. It seemed like it was bigger fish to fry to figure out Mickey had died in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when no one can go to the hospital, and that he died alone, which we don't say, but hopefully you understand that that is what is killing Valerie. And now that she walked onto that soundstage, she's back on a sitcom. Mickey would have been so happy, but also like, I don't have Mickey.
On the conversation of Mickey, I'm wondering, there's something about this character that clearly has resonated and has had such staying power. And I was thinking about it this morning. I'm like, well, what is it about him? And I was thinking about sort of the lack of depictions of gay men of a certain age that I've seen on film and television. And I couldn't help but try to think, okay, well, is there another Mickey type figure? And I couldn't think of one. And it made me think of how we began this podcast and talking about the singularity of Valerie and how there's no other Valerie. Well, equally so, there's no other Mickey. Can you talk about building Mickey as, on the page, bringing Robert into the fold and fleshing out that character?
That was Michael. Day one, he had Robert Michael Morris in mind because he knew him, and that's who Mickey was.
The whole first season was referencing reality TV. And what was the great magnet to reality TV was characters that were real people that wandered in front of the camera. So if Valerie was going to be an actress in front of the camera and being an actress, we needed her to have somebody who was not an actor. By the time I met him in college, Robert Michael Morris was a theater teacher, and then after all that, he had retired. But what he always was authentically theatrical. Authentically theatrical.
It's showtime.
Yes, it is.
So we knew that Valerie needed a supporter. We knew she needed Mark at home, but we knew she needed a blind follower.
Valerie's a star.
Like a St. Bernard, with a cask of rum in the cold. Like somebody who's going to give her that.
Mickey, can I have my signs?
Oh, so exciting, Red.
So we knew there was going to be a hairdresser because that felt fun. And I said, Lisa, I have someone that I think it could be. And so we wrote him with the idea of this person. And then I called up Michael and I said, I have some good news for you. Lisa and I have written a show. There's a part in it for you, based on you. The bad news is you have to go to HBO and audition because it was high pressure. To get a part in a sitcom or a show on HBO is like, you have to go through so many gauntlets, so many actors burn up entering the atmosphere the day of, nerves, the pressure, sign the contract. We put all that in the show too, with Valerie signing the money deal, and it all happens. It's terrible. Michael got off the elevator, met Lisa for the first time. What did he bring you?
Something from QVC that he got, and it was a necklace with a teeny tiny, beautiful little diamond. That was beautiful.
He said, here,
and
this is for you.
Put it on.
She put it on.
It's beautiful.
For the audition. He read, beat out a lot of famous actors.
Uh-huh.
And Lisa never took the necklace off until we were actually filming the first episode.
Wow.
And he was great. He never had a fear. He was kind of just like, it was literally couture comedy. I would put this on him. It fit perfectly. Bring your Sherpa.
Bring your Sherpa.
He just was really perfect.
Yeah.
And like this bouquet of love for her. And those two together.
Yes.
It was like click. There was nothing to be said. And then when we did the second season, he had cancer and we knew it. I'll tell you one hilarious story. I knew he had cancer. Lisa knew he had cancer, stage 4. So he had to go to his medical at HBO.
The insurance.
The insurance thing.
Medical exam.
And I said to him on the phone, do not mention you have cancer. It's just a precaution. It's just sign this, you're fine. So he said, okay. He called me up 2 hours later and said, well, I told him I had stage 4 cancer. I couldn't lie. And it's like, uh-oh. Casey Bloy, CEO of HBO, called me up and said, so Michael's very sick. And I said, yeah. He says, what do you think? I said, we think he can do it. He said, okay, we'll do it. And he did. And he got better. He got better.
Yeah.
And better and better and better and better and stronger and funnier.
And his doctors were saying, what are you doing? Like, because it's staying put. Like, it's not getting worse. What are you doing?
Not getting worse. Doing what he loved and being surrounded by love and having a valuable thing to be actually retarded the growth of the tumors. And then the final story I'll tell you about him. It's the scene where Valerie goes to his house because she thinks he's dead.
Oh.
God.
And he's naked.
He sure is.
And when I was 17, I was Puck in A Midsummer Night's Dream. And he was the director and the costumer in college. And I was in a bodysuit and he was stippling me, my little 17-year-old body, with paints like Mickey Rooney in the old movie. And I was mortified just that this was even happening. I was just embarrassed. And then so when I'm tucking in the sheet around his balls and stuff to make sure you don't see too much, he's mortified. I said, this is payback for Puck. And he started laughing so hard that I fell on the bed and laughed with him.
Wow. What a beautiful memory.
Yeah, it's great. Well, it was all great. It was all great. So not having him had to be celebrated, but in a way that was also story. Because otherwise you're just stopping for a memorial. There had to be a Valerie story, like, what does this do?
Yeah.
And Tommy pushing her to deal with something was a good story.
Yeah. Can you talk about the moment in the storage room? There's this incredibly powerful shot. Valerie's staring away from the cameras, but we capture it. Camera's able to get it in the mirror.
Yeah.
And it's Valerie having a private moment and what seems like for the first time being in the presence of the storage unit and being, seeing all these mementos of her past, it suddenly kind of sets in for her. And you see it in her face.
It wasn't all the stuff. It was the where's Mickey? And how could I have lost? I cannot have lost Mickey. Because she was up all night wondering, did I bring him from Brentwood? Where is he? I can't find the box. What did I do? She's kind of panicked about it. And it just all hits her that, shit, and he died alone. And she hadn't looked at that. She put it away. Even when it happened, just put it away. Because it's beyond something you can really cope with, especially Valerie, right? So, yeah, that's the thing that's hitting her is he died alone.
I think the other thing that's important, the engine for the beginning of that, is when Cynthia, the organizer, keeps saying, I don't have human remains.
Yeah.
I have nothing that says human remains. And could he be in a professional box? And Valerie just keeps saying, it's Mickey. He's personal. It's great. And Lisa's, come on.
Well,
And I have to say, too, I love that small gesture of Jane taking the bags on the way out.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's this signal of, sure, they're coworkers. Would they be in each other's lives if it weren't for the comeback? Perhaps not. And yet, in that moment, she's being a friend. It feels to me
I
like she's being a
agree.
friend.
yeah.
I agree.
No, she's human.
They both shared Mickey.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody loved Mickey.
And you see it in Laura's eyes in
Yes.
that scene.
Oh,
She
Laura's so wonderful.
Laura's wonderful.
Oh, my
That's
God.
The stillness, but also very quietly, she says, we'll find him.
We'll find.
Just this encouraging, we'll find him.
I do want to talk about the cast bonding because we have, this, we're in the podcast studio, death is invoked thinking about Mickey, and then in true the comeback fashion, we arrive at the first meeting of the cast, as we had with season 1 with Room and Board. Valerie's doing it all over again, and death creeps its way back in, and Valerie has to sort of maneuver around it. Can you talk about that cast meeting each other scene, how much you were thinking? For me, I couldn't help but compare it to Valerie meeting the cast in season 1. And also you see this shift in Valerie where she's come in a little bit more studied. She knows who some of these people are. She's done her homework. I read that as Valerie saying, I don't want to say better, but I want to improve on experiences I've had in the past and make sure that this is a better experience than I had on previous sitcoms.
Well, we see her looking at the casting site, right? So she does have a say. I don't know if it's said, but she feels like she's, discovering all these people you haven't seen, except for Walter. And then it turns out she likes them because there's something familiar about them because she forgot that she met them or worked with them or there's some,
And the other thing is
there's
a great thought, which is to be number 1 on the call sheet. And what's so great is a lot of Valerie's struggles in the other incarnations is she wasn't. And even in the second one, she says, I'm number 2 on the call sheet with Seeing Red. But she was number 7 on the call sheet with Room and Board, maybe 6. But so she comes in with this is how number 1 acts.
Right, but she was number 1 on Mrs. Hat.
And that's why she keeps referencing it. And I'm it.
Let's not forget.
But it's like a
Yeah.
return to grace, a return
Right.
to the power, the graciousness of being the star who welcomes the family. I mean, Valerie is the center of the family. It was what's so great about that. And all the actors that we cast are all magical, but when you see them all together, they feel like a cast of a sitcom.
Yes.
So we created this world, and they sort of fulfill it beautifully, all of them.
Well, you did. I went into, work together on a Monday, and he said, so Saturday I wrote the pilot, like in one day. And I said, let's do a table read, you and I. So we sat down and we read it, and I had a note.
She had a note. And what was the note?
The
what
note
was the note?
oh no,
Get this.
you need a scene where there's some heart between Beth and the nephew.
Wow.
I think what we need is a new sweet scene, something with some heart.
Of course, we all toyed with, let's just do the How's That pilot as a special.
I know.
So it was really fun. I handed it to Lisa. She reads it. We were laughing. She's killing it. There's so much for Beth to do. And so the trick of this and the heartbreak of this is what we only get to show, because
Right.
the real show is the show around the show.
And it's such a joy to watch Valerie as Beth be good.
Yes.
And, we saw this on Seeing Red before, so this is not, this has been discovered before. However, I have to say, it's one of those moments of being reminded Valerie's an Emmy Award winner for good reason. And it wasn't just a one and done. She excels at these roles. There's a reason why I'm It was a hit. There's a reason why the audience goes, well, yeah, ran for several
Didn't
seasons.
make it to syndication.
That's true. Didn't
Because they
get to
put a
six.
monkey on at the end.
Are there real life Valeries out there that inspired the characterization? Is it an amalgamation of things you both have observed in other actors over the years?
It is. It's you said amalgamation?
Amalgamation.
Yeah, and it is.
The yoga blessing hands came from an actress I worked with, who whenever you gave her a compliment, she would do this back to you. It was a way of deflecting her ego, I guess.
Oh, yeah. And I saw people doing it also, and it felt like this is not in your heart at all. This is just you wanting to look zen and
Gracious.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Gaia.
and the construct of Valerie as the actress in seasons 1 and 2, who is basically shit upon by the machine of the shows, is a long legacy. I mean, when we were writing the first season and Lisa came into the writing room, everyone was telling a story about how the writers talked about the stars in the writing room. Lisa's head almost blew off. She was like, that happens?
Yeah. It wasn't like that on Friends. I mean, and then there was, like there was the case where the writers were blowing off steam.
Yes.
In the writers' room, which I did firmly believe that writers need to do that in the writers' room, as long as that's where it stays. And also, personally, you can say whatever you want about me behind my back, as long as I don't know it didn't happen.
And I would say that usually the reason you were talking about an actor in a writing room, or they were, is because the show wasn't working, or they were blaming the actor for not being able to elevate whatever 2 a.m., 3 a.m. dick joke they put into the show that then they had to hear fail the next day. They need someone to blame, and it can't be the fact that they were there till 3 a.m. and had a bad rewrite. Then there are amazing shows where that doesn't happen. When I was on Murphy Brown, it never happened. Lisa had an experience on Friends that it never happened, but I've been in other rooms where it did. In season 1, Lisa said the late night cookie run where they were blowing off steam. Greg Mottola, the movie director, was directing that, and he was laughing, and he looked at me and I said, this is a documentary. This is the closest thing I've ever written to real life, this moment. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah, this happens. And hopefully everything that we put into the comeback, every season happens.
Right.
And then we massage it, manipulate it, stretch it, embellish it to tell Valerie's story that season.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I like, for instance, thinking about this episode, like the conversation between Valerie and Jimmy, when they're sort of working out the kinks in the script and going back and forth about what if we try this. That's something, as someone outside the industry, I don't know how that works, but I like seeing that perspective of like, okay, this is what it's like to be on a set and watch two of these greats sort of like working out. We know it's not quite working. What if we did this? What if we did this? Then, of course, complicating things because it's the comeback, you have Alice Sist come in
Yeah.
and say, well, there's an even better idea, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
The interesting thing about Valerie and Jimmy's little collab right at the top about what the scene needs, that's so important because the show we're not doing this season is Valerie's on the out.
Right.
Trying to get her voice heard. It's different now. We're in a different place. Valerie's not begging to be heard. She's actually part of the process because the story is then what happens when she's part of the process.
Yeah.
And it's a new process.
Yeah. How does that go?
Yeah.
It's fun to watch this as, as it's spoken about in the episode, this awe-ick moment, because as a viewer, I'm watching it and I had the awe.
What's an awe-ick?
It's a scene where the audience goes, "Aww," and the writers go, "Ick."
They storm out and he's like the voice of it. He kicks the door open and says, our names are on the script. And that's an interesting thing.
Are you seriously competing with Al?
No, Mary, I care. I'm the voice of the women of a certain age.
Oh my God.
Our names are on the script!
When we were building this and talking about AI, one of the things Lisa kept saying to me over and over again, I guess she thought it was some sort of thing I needed to hear.
No, it's just true.
No one knows who writes anything. Writers think, my name is on the script. People are going to think I wrote a bad joke.
I know, but the credits have been reduced to that teeny square over there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you're just looking at the timer to tell you when the next episode's
Yeah,
start. I mean,
it's been
not,
all
no one's...
thing. So the idea that
Even
Josh...
when it was sitcoms and you'd see, like, it's over everyone's face, you're just, like, looking past the letters to
well,
look at
that's
the person.
Opposite
I'm
of
sorry.
what a writer thinks. That's the truth. But a writer doesn't think they stayed up till 4 a.m. to be reduced to a small inch box that no one knows. But the next thing that's important is Jane comes up and says, Jimmy seems upset about AI. How do you feel? And Survivor Valerie says, needed a new scene, got a new scene.
And that's why Michael's in favor of AI, everybody. No, I'm kidding. It just sounded
That's
like
the
the best.
heartbreak of it.
Right.
And look, the first thing we knew about AI when we were writing this was the joke wasn't it was bad. Because by the time this is on, it will already have moved past what we know. There are AI machines that are way far past ChatGPT at this point. I said AI machines. That's right.
I know.
Let me get the
Well,
butter
they are.
churn. Back in our day in Oklahoma, the AI machines, you're a monster. Yeah. Anyway, when I was chiseling this scene in the cave.
This is Valerie mining in season 2.
You're so current. You're so current and young. And I'm still saying AI machine.
But it is a machine.
It's a machine.
It's a
It's
machine.
not, you're not
But
wrong.
you did, but I said it and then you gave me that look like you just said AI machine
It's funny.
at my expense.
Listen, I don't know nothing about those AI machines. All I know is that it's replacing
what
humanity.
time does the stagecoach come through? I
But
hear
it
the
is-
AI machines are really getting good.
But
Anyway,
they are getting good.
They're getting good.
Yes.
And the joke wasn't going to be, oh, it's bad, because that was done 3 award shows ago when everybody was doing ChatGPT wrote my monologue. Like, it's snore. There's nothing there.
Right.
It's like, maybe it's okay. Not desired, but okay for awe-ick.
Right.
Well, that's upsetting.
Married couple, working together.
Oh, not them. That machine wrote a pretty good scene in 10 minutes.
Actually, it was like 50 seconds, Mr. Burroughs, but I held it back so it wouldn't look too fast.
We head into an altercation, shall we say, between Beth and the costume designer of the show.
Well, do you think
Yeah.
it's an altercation? Let's start there.
It's 2 firm decision makers that are sort of coming to blows. And it's interesting watching Valerie negotiate between actress and executive producer. It's like Valerie wanting to figure out how to get him there himself.
Oh, yeah.
And then realizing that he's not going to get there.
Yeah.
No, he's already decided
Yes.
what she is.
Yes.
Well, the script said woman of a certain age, so that's just reality.
Not my reality. I'm a woman of a certain age, and I still color my hair.
And then what about how mean Carter is? About what are you going to do? What's your hair going to be up and gray?
Yeah.
And Benito stabs her.
Oh, that part to me wasn't mean. The part that was mean was, okay, I'm not having this. The older actress threatened by the younger actress, and Valerie's just threatened. I told you to make her sexier. What's happening? Like yeah. And so it was, I watched it with someone who hadn't seen it and didn't know it was coming, and they were getting so, what? Like talking back, saying, she's trying to help him.
Though you seem to have an aversion to funny.
I don't have an aversion to funny, darling. Okay, I've done that, wore the bad tracksuit and, the big joke. And I'm more than willing to do that if that's what the character is, okay? But this character is moving story along.
That exchange kind of came out in one
writing session. I knew how to push Valerie's buttons as Carter. And the funny thing, it's quite a feast of a scene. It is pretty long. And there were things we thought we should lift, and then we put them back in because Valerie needs to, as you said, help him. That's the heartbreak of the scene.
Yeah.
Valerie knows shit, but he's reducing her to somebody who doesn't know anything except ego.
And it's not just about her.
Right.
And how she's going to look. I mean, it starts off with, well, and she's right. It can't just be a big joke outfit. She's right. I mean, that was important to us.
Yeah, and it was important
she's right.
That this scene follow the little ick scene, because she says in this scene, Beth is somebody who's moving the story along and has feelings. So she can't be the tracksuit. She even references the tracksuit from Aunt Sassy.
It's not a joke.
And then it was like, okay, who's going to play this? Who's this costumer? It's just like with the showrunners. How are they different than Tom and Paulie in the first season? So we had to find a character that was different. And it's Benito.
And that's such a unique, I don't want to say conundrum necessarily, but that's such a unique circumstance that when you do a show like this, where she's immersed in the world of sitcoms, you are in a sense designing these new characters that come in, but are in jobs that we have seen on previous seasons. You get the sense that she's using everything she learned about all the things that went wrong with Polly to try and lower the temperature as much as possible, as well as the fact that she's now an executive producer and she's taking that on and saying, listen, if no one's going to run this ship, it's going to have to be me.
Oh my God, no, I'm not getting into this where an actor tells me what another actor can and can't wear. I'm not getting into that situation.
Okay, but that's all right because that's not what this situation is. Okay, this isn't an actor talking about another actor. This is an executive producer talking to a costumer about what the needs of the show are.
It's very satisfying.
It is.
To see her stand up for
it
herself.
Is.
Sometimes when you hand in scripts, people just read the scripts, and there's one scene people sort of talk about that they experienced when they were reading it. And in this incarnation, it was that scene. People were kind of electrified by the fact that Valerie stood up for herself.
I couldn't help but wonder about the scene that we don't get to see, which is Josh going and firing Carter. And I just was like, the thought of the cameras following that and how explosive that would be. It was both tantalizing, but also evoked a fight or flight in me where I was like, I don't know if I could handle that.
Right.
Yeah.
But also just how detached they are. Normally, the showrunners would know who the costume designer is. They would have seen what the plans were. They would have seen every picture of what everybody's going to wear and guided them. And that's how detached they are.
Speaking of everything everybody's going to wear,
small
I don't
print.
think we can go past this episode without talking about Tommy's toupee.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
I talked to Jack the other day, who's finally seen the episodes. He goes, I'm going to want that toupee. I mean, literally,
it does look good.
It takes 20 years away.
If anybody asks, I'm 70.
Tommy comes in, we discover the ashes, and we have this beautiful, beautiful moment of Valerie. Where is she up in the, where is that?
She's on top of the soundstage.
On top of the soundstage.
On top of soundstage 24.
Yeah. And we have this moment of Valerie.
Stop it. No. He's just making fun of the fact
that you can't
I said
speak.
Soundstage.
She's on top of the soundstage.
Oh, you are. Karma's coming for you, man. On one of these podcasts.
It's not an attack. It's just adorable.
Okay. Lisa is on the top of the soundstage. That actually
Yeah, I've never been up there before.
That movie was filmed there.
Oh, now Voyager.
Yeah.
That was my mom's favorite, and we shot Friends on that soundstage, and so it seemed like a great fit.
So she's up on the roof, opens up the ashes and spreads them. And what I love so much about this moment is I was like, what's going to be the comedic beat here, right? I was expecting the ashes to fly in her face or something.
Right.
And it's in fact just this beautifully sincere moment.
Yeah. It was moving every single time. And the wind never shifted. The ashes never flew in my face.
We did not want to do a bit. So I said a little prayer to Michael, Robert Michael. I said, help us out here. And I swear to God, the take that's in, when Lisa pulls the thing back, they almost come out like the three fairies in Disney's Sleeping Beauty. They just sort of thing, and you hear Lisa say, aw, because she's reacting to that. What's really happening is those magical moments are actually happening.
Oh. Yeah.
And then the treacle cutter to the whole thing. Treacle cutter is a comedy writing term when you do something very sweet. To treacle cut is to then sort of put something vinegary on it. So it's patience saying.
Just so you know, the correct quote is, "Don't let's ask for the moon, we have the stars."
Oh, my version. And then what happened on the monitor?
Yeah, there was a rainbow. And then to have Tommy, because he can't do stairs, down screaming, goodbye, buddy, buddy.
It was so great to have a character there. That was what was so great, that knew Mickey too. I mean, I think that was also just that he knew Mickey, that they have that connection was also what drew her to having
and
Tommy
then he was
around.
so joyous and saying, bye.
Oh, Mickey, Mickey, Mick.
There he was flying all over the lot.
All over the lot.
Right? Didn't you say that would just make him so happy?
It would make him so happy. There's actually, if you listen very closely, when the ashes are spread, we did not put any wind effect in, but there's an actual audible wind that's on some microphone somewhere that, you know, when you mix the shows, you try to improve it. And I was like, under no circumstances can that wind be gone. I don't know where it came from.
Chills.
Yeah.
Lisa, Michael, this episode especially plucked at my heartstrings, and I know I'm not alone. So thank you from all of us. Coming up, we're talking to two men who make Valerie's life significantly harder in episode 3. Benito Skinner as Carter the costumer, and John Early as Josh the showrunner. John Early, Benito Skinner, it is so exciting to have you on the Comeback Official podcast. How are you both?
I'm good.
So good. John,
how are you?
I am good. I'm good, me too. Hi, Evan. So good to see you and be here.
It's good to see you both. It's funny, we all have a history together, so it's fun to be here now in this specific context. Now, I know that you both are big fans of this show, so how incredible to now be a part of it. Can you both talk about the process of going from fan to star of the show? Let's start with John.
Well, you know, there was no transformation. I'm still just a fan. You know, it was incredibly surreal. That's such an obvious thing to say, but that is how it felt. It felt kind of dreamlike. And I had a moment the first day of shooting when she was like a foot away from me doing Valerie. And I just was like, it was like fully out of body. I was like watching myself. I could not believe it. To see Valerie up close, the kind of naked need but like, which normally I see on a screen, but to have it right there, it was so crazy. I still don't really understand that I did it.
And how about for you, Benito?
I was fully, dissociating, because also we shot on the Friends soundstage too. So then
oh my God,
I'm like
right.
so nervous, and they say that to me as I'm walking in, and then we just like immediately did like a run through. And it's just Lisa right there. And then the thing that freaked me out the most was then I didn't even notice, but then it was like Jane, and then she's there too. And I'm just like, oh, I really am in this show. This is so like, yeah, it just felt, I think I had so much gratitude. And I also was having this thing of like, oh my God, like it's so fun to watch her again and to see her work. And in every take, like change it and just make like
I know
such genius decisions all the time. It just was like it was hard not to just be such a like gay fanboy being like mother under my
I know,
like,
I know.
mother.
I had
It
to
was
like muzzle myself.
bad. Oh, totally. And I was like, that was so good. Like, I'm like, I can't compliment Lisa on her acting. You know, it's like,
I know, but
it was,
who doesn't love a compliment? You know, it's like it's such a funny impulse when you're a fan and you're like, they don't want to hear it, but it's like, of course she would love to hear that we liked what she just
from a
did.
gay guy?
Yeah, come on.
Like, come on. Yeah.
I'm sure you experienced this too, Benito. It's like it was so thrilling, obviously, to find out that I was going to do it. But then at the same time, I was like, well, cool. I don't want to destroy my favorite piece of art that's ever been made.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't want to
Watching these
ruin it.
episodes, I was like, oh, fuck, watch me come in and bomb. I was like, I have ruined a legacy. And, oh, God, like, gays on Twitter are going to be so mean about it. I'm like,
we're staying away.
Well, I can confirm for you both, from the fan side of things, neither of you ruined the show. In fact, you enhance this season. So I just want to extricate that worry from your brains.
Thank
now,
you, Evan.
What is it about the DNA of this show that makes it so particularly beloved? And why particularly do like comedians love this show? Like there's something about the show where like it's a comedian's comedy.
I mean, if I had to guess, I think, you know, we all work so hard to hide our inner Valerie. You know, we work so hard to cover up the kind of desperation that we feel, the desperate need for approval and relevance, you know. So it's like, I think, kind of thrilling to see someone who literally can't hide it. You know, she tries to hide it in hilarious ways, but it just kind of leaks out. You know, it's so funny, but it also feels like Lars von Trier or something. I mean, even in her funniest roles, like even in Romy and Michelle, you know, there's a soul. Michelle is a very, like, there's a lot going on.
yeah, I think it's like the honesty of every single scene and moment, and that it is that desperation. And I think it does happen maybe to comedians a little bit more than actors, of walking into a space and being like, I had something in my mind of how I was going to be treated, and I'm a clown. Like, I am going to just like, my whole pride and soul is going to be decimated for the next 20 minutes when I go and meet with the costume department or see who else was cast. It's so funny to root for someone who is, you know, doing all these things that are frustrating, but like she can do that. And you're right, it is like Michelle and Romy. It's like even like a quote unquote like bimbo choice made in that feels like something we would make too. And we're like still her and still Valerie in all these situations where we thought one thing was going to make us feel special or important or be seen by someone, and instead you just get like your soul like decimated. Feels so what I think being a comedian, and definitely what being gay is. So
Totally.
Yeah.
I want to hear from you both about, first, your reaction to finding out that there was going to be a season 3 of this show. You know, we're over a decade since season 2. I know you both are huge fans of Lisa and The Comeback. And then additionally, I'd love to hear what it was like when you found out that you were going to be a part of season 3. Let's start with Benny.
Oh my God. What's funny is that when I found out they were doing it, I was doing a rewatch because there's like 5 comfort programs for me, and this is one. And I just was like back at my place in LA when I was living there, and I was just like, well, I need the comfort of this, and also kind of the stress and anxiety of it. Like, I think it makes me feel alive. And then I found out it was coming back, and I was like, oh my God, thank God. And then, you know, you get that call from your agent where they're like, a lot of parts for gay guys. It's a big thing for us. And I'm like, uh-oh. And then they call me and they're like, there's this one part and he's like 45, but we still want you to tape. And I was like, totally. I was like, and I would tape for anything.
It's Valerie.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm Valerie. But I was like, I'll literally do anything. And then it was like the joy of getting even the sides, where I was like, oh my God, this is so... I started to see some of like the AI jokes. I was like, this is insane. I was like, they've like done it again and nailed it. And every time this comes back, it feels like the exact perfect moment for it to come back. And then I got it, and I was so relieved and excited. And yeah, I just was like very nervous, but because it is that thing where it feels like so precious, and like the show means so much to me. But the whole experience was lovely, and like Lisa and Michael Patrick King are like true legends and professionals, and so lovely and so funny and collaborative. So it was like a truly perfect experience.
And how about for you, John?
It's private. I'm kidding.
I signed an NDA, so
I mean, first of all, I just want to say, like, we're in this like grotesque, period of like reboot culture where just like we can't like let go of things, and it's like, it's just like weird, like we're gonna make another version of this thing, But what I love about the comeback is like it is about like aging, and it's like about time, and it's about, I don't know, and like it should come back, it's like it's like the whole point of it. And I think about Valerie, I'm like, God, I wonder what Valerie would think about this moment or this particular thing in the culture. What if she was asked on the red carpet about this thing? Like I often think about like what would she say if asked about like a political thing. That really makes me laugh.
Yes.
And so, it was just, I was so thrilled. It made total sense to me, and it makes sense on the kind of like what the commentary of every season, how it's like kind of talking about a different moment of like chaos in television. And just like, I was like, oh, this is brilliant. This is totally brilliant.
It's funny you say that about, imagining Valerie in various scenarios, because I remember during the strike in 2023, I had a thought wondering, what would it be like to see Valerie Cherish on the picket line? There are so many moments throughout this season that are just so satisfying for those of us that were like, what would it be like to see Valerie Cherish as Roxy Hart? Like, there's these scenarios that you just place Valerie in, and it's like, oh my God, I dreamed of this. And it just feels like this fantasy finally realized.
I know.
Her doing the glam bot.
Can you imagine?
The glam bot? Okay, so she does it, but I'm like, God, they might just have to do that.
Now, as we see in this episode, John, your character, has a bit of a temper tantrum.
Yes.
Calm down.
No! Sorry, no! This is all hard enough!
Can you talk about Josh's arc in the sense of from the time he meets Valerie to where we land at the end of this episode?
Yeah. My understanding of Josh is like, he was a former theater student, or, so, I relate. I think this is someone who used to want to be an actor, who has ended up in this partnership where he kind of gets to cosplay as like a showrunner. I think Abby's character has the actual kind of maybe like stamina, intelligence, like can actually do it. And like he's kind of using their partnership to live out this kind of like dying fantasy of like the kind of being the next Tina Fey, which is, I think, something that like I think a lot of people from our generation grew up being like, oh, you can write your own. I mean, Benny, you're literally living the dream, to be very clear. I was about to be like, the dream's over, but he's literally doing it. But like,
Valentine,
yeah, I literally forgot. I'm like, and it's dead, and none of us can do
and it'll
that.
never happen again. Yeah, and if it's happening, it's failing. Yeah.
No, but like, I do think there's a generation of people who like, climb the ladder at the various kind of comedy institutions, UCB, Second City Ground, and they expected to land in a television industry that was they were dreaming of like 30 Rocks, and then before they knew it, it all fell apart. I think he's just like in the middle of like accepting that dream is dying for him. Not for Benny, but for him. And so I think it's just a really intense moment, and he's trying to bring some like integrity to the proceedings, not because I think he actually does have integrity, sadly. I mean, I love Josh, but I don't think he has like artistic integrity, actually. I think Abby's character does, but I think Josh maybe is a little more like he's like enjoying the feeling of being like pretentious and kind of like a writer, as like all these like execs are like coming in. Like I know people like that, and I'm like that too, loving to be like the artist and having to like interface with like anyway. So I just think it's a very he's just on edge. and so I don't know what leads to it. Well, Benny's character is what exactly leads to it, is the kind of so I don't know, Benny, if you want to speak to your actions.
I mean, the whole scene, it was one of those things where it's like we're getting our feelings hurt the entire time. And so it's that thing of like any note is a personal attack. And so like when I first read it, I was like, God, this is so genius, because it is like this guy showed up and he's like, I'm a costume designer. I have like my Pinterest boards ready. She is going to love this. And like, I am going to be nominated for that. Like, this is a huge moment for me. I think like, and so immediately getting the note, they're like, stabs to him, and it's all like personal, and the whole thing is personal the whole time. But I think what I love about the Valerie thing too is it's like, I think for so many like queer people and women in the industry, if they say something like that, they have to keep reiterating that they're easy. They're like, but I'm easy. I don't love that, but I'm easy. And like her kind of doing that. And then at the end she comes back and is like, fine, I'll fucking, do it. And the struggle there felt so real that she like still, after all this time and like so like being in the industry for so long, still can't just be like, I'm not gonna wear that. Like felt so real and punishing, and my character just being like so, for lack of a better, so like butthurt about the whole thing. It felt so fun to play and real too. I'm like, oh my God, I still take every note as like a personal attack.
Me
so
too.
hard not to. So that was easy to channel. Yeah.
I've never taken a note well, ever. Not once.
I'm like, so you hate it, you hate me, you want me dead.
So I'm fat. It's confirmed. Yeah.
You think I'm that? Yeah. It's just like, and I think he does that too. He says like, oh, I love that. Like everything is just so like has to be like it's iconic. It's just like so. The writing was like, I mean, that's just like a dream script that you get, and like every joke is on the page, and then you watch her perform it, and it's like insane.
We don't get to see your two characters meet, but where we leave things in this episode is that Josh, if he can find his way, is going to find his way to the costume room, and that he is going to have it out with Carter. If you two were to say how that, shall we say, altercation were to go, do you have any predictions about who would have come out on top there?
Yeah, I think Carter would have come out on top.
You think so? Okay.
Oh yeah, I think that Josh, well, first of all, I think that Josh has a lot of repressed sexuality. And I think that he would have been threatened by Carter's gayness. I do think that he's probably attracted to Carter. I think any sort of power he's trying to assert in this imaginary fight, it's like, would be undercut by his like, kind of like strange repressed sexualdy.
And how about for you, Benito? What do you think would have happened in that dressing room?
I'd love to see next season. In 10 years, we'll find out. But yeah,
when I've been fully...
There's something, yeah, I don't know. There's some sexual tension. Maybe there would be kind of a release of sorts. That feels real. You never know. I don't know if either would have, I think both would have left that maybe thinking that they won.
I just think, like, in my mind, Carter's cooler than Josh.
The top was Helmut Lang, and I know that that was important to him. That felt right to me, of like, the shirt is Helmut Lang, and he's like making sure that like there's a tag on the back, and he feels, and I think that's why he's so wounded when she's like, I don't fuck with any of this, because he's like, I have taste.
Yes, and then Josh wears like not like New Balance shoes and is kind of like dorky theater kid at the end of the day. I think he would have been threatened by Carter.
Talk to me about what it was like working with Michael Patrick King. It's my understanding from talking to some of the actors that his approach is very different than other directors that they've worked with. Was that your experience?
It was very cool to realize, like, part of what makes the show so detailed is not just what's in the script. He is like constantly generating very instinctively, like, just detail. He's like literally before every take, you never like settle into one version of a take. Like before every take, he's going around, he's throwing in some sort of spontaneous element without telling you so that you can react in real time while the cameras are rolling. Like, for example, like when we're shooting the sitcom, he just randomly before a take was like, he was like, here, he pointed to this background woman who was right behind me playing an audience member, and he was like, she's your manager. And he was like, can you just complain to her the whole time? So instead of me standing there off screen, kind of just like not knowing what to do with my hands, like which inevitably would have been how I would have acted if he had not talked to me. Like I had this whole backstory that just exploded like with the manager, and it gave me something to do, and it helped me understand the character more, and it felt like, oh, this poor boy just needs like a mommy, and he's like talking to this manager woman, like desperate, like a mom, Anyway, but like the point is, I was like, oh, this is why this show feels so like crazily real and alive, and it was so cool.
So the last thing I want to ask you both is, how has this show changed the way that you think about fame? A light question.
It consistently makes me feel not alone in insecurities and fears and feeling like vulnerable. It's funny you have that story about Michael Petricking. I didn't realize that he did that. And so we had done so many takes that I was like, does he hate it? I'm like, am I doing this wrong? And then someone's like, no, he just plays. And I was like, oh, thank fuck. Okay, good, I'll play. But like that moment of kind of like, I don't know, the insecurity about it all, and that you're trying to make people laugh or feel something, but at the same time you are just like, oh, I have to like go out, and it's like everything could be embarrassing if you let it. So it's like, like the other day I just had too much bronzer on, and it's just every photo I look fucking insane, and like those photos live forever, and I just have to live with that. I guess it just is what it is. But that's the show, I think, allows you to laugh at that and feel less alone, I think.
That's beautiful. Well, yeah, I was just, that made me think of season 1 when she says, don't hate me, you can't hate me. To Pauly G, it's like, to me, that's like my favorite line.
Don't hate me. Yeah, you can't hate me.
To come out of like Friends, and in Michael Petricking's case, Sex and the City, these like giant populist hits, like these like just giant hits for the mass culture, whatever. To come out of both of those things and to make something that was like this, like confrontational and like scathing and uncomfortable and stuff, I'm just like, to me, it's like, it's so punk rock. I mean, I think they're so cool. They're really cool artists. It's cool that Lisa clearly on some level has some deep suspicion of the fame machine and wants to make something that kind of like, ruthless and like excoriating, which is a word I've never used. I think it's like it's an important lesson.
John, Benito, thank you so much. I want to say on a personal note, we all, I think on this call, consider The Comeback the Mount Everest of comedy. And I speak on behalf of many of your fans in saying how cool it is to see you guys both not only being on the show, but being such a important part of what is now The Comeback's legacy. So congratulations to you both.
Oh my God.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, baby girl.
This is heaven. Yeah. Thank you, baby girl. Thank you, baby girls.
Thank you both. Benito, John, thank you for so gleefully standing in Valerie's way. Now, let's check in with Valerie herself for another edition of Always Valerie Cherish. Now, Valerie, we have questions for you today. And
great, yeah.
And I want to bring you in here, but I'm not seeing you on the camera. If you if you just hit the camera button in the bottom there.
I did hit it, yeah.
Okay, well, we'll just get started, but if you can figure out midway that it's the camera button in the bottom there.
Do you want me to try again, or?
We'll just proceed. Our first question comes from Sadie D on Instagram. Have you ever turned down a part you regret?
I don't believe in turning down parts, so no, that hasn't happened.
From Jessie H on TikTok, why are you so good at comedy?
Yeah, I don't know. I think just love to make people laugh, because I think maybe it doesn't cure cancer, but you know what? Maybe it does.
From Tess B on Threads, I'm an actor. My agent doesn't get me. Any advice?
you know what? It's all up to you, doll. Whether your agent gets you or not. So you just have to call them every day and say, hi, sorry to be a nuisance, but you've got a job to do. So, just get me an audition. No skin off your back, right? But be nice about it, because, if you're not nice, then they'll drop you.
All right, Valerie, well, we'll see you again next week, and hopefully we can solve these tech issues. Huge thank you to Lisa Kudrow and Michael Patrick King, and to our guests today, Benito Skinner and John Early, for such a thoughtful and fun conversation. The next episode is called Valerie Does It All, and you can watch or listen to us discuss it right after the new episode drops. Stream new episodes of The Comeback on HBO Max and catch The Comeback official podcast on HBO Max, the HBO Max YouTube channel, and wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. We'll be back together next episode to continue charting the way Valerie is rebuilding herself in this brave new world. This was an OBB sound production for HBO, hosted by me, Evan Ross Katz. Executive producers for OBB are Michael D. Ratner, Scott Ratner, and Toby Lawless. Executive producer for HBO is Allison Cohen-Sorokoch. Producers for HBO, Becky Rowe, Kenya Reyes, and Aaron Kelly. Producer for OBB, Toby Lawless. Podcast manager, Tess Bartholomew. Research producer, Jesse Holland. Production manager, Kevin Lynn. Production coordinator, Terry Kraft. Studio coordinator, Elijah Matias. Editor, Jesse Holland. Post-production supervisor, Mariana Crisostomo. Assistant editor, Mark Alcacid. Production accountants, Bobby Hanna and Zachary Steinberg. Director of photography, Heath Gresham. First assistant camera and camera operator, Chris Piper. Key grip, Sam Satosky. Grip, Michael Oparicha. Production designer, Michelle Hall. Lead man, Leo Rodriguez. Swing game, Amanda Hart, Miguel Gregory, Cielo Yanez, Ian Alloway and Christopher Mason. Sound mixer and editor, Josh Falcon. On-set mixer, Darren Bolin. Key makeup artist, Elaine Offers. Key hairstylist, Megan Heaney. Hair and makeup artist, Kendall Shannon. Production assistant, Max Jordan. Associate director of social for OBB, Lenore Castro. Senior coordinator of social for OBB, Sharif Bakari. Special thanks to HBO Max, Concept and Design Studio, Matthew Truex, and Nicholas Vega of WB Archives. And Tim Meehan and Samantha Coatsworth.